Next on BYUSN, the fallout from conference realignment continues to make waves, but what has more of your attention than that? The BYU football camp storylines. Plus, Jernaro Gilford previews the cornerbacks. How many players does he want to use, and who are they? And Jason Scheer on how it went down last week with Arizona to the Big 12. Welcome to BYU Sports Nation, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. It is Wednesday, August 9th. I am Jeremy Jordan, and we begin today's show with a conversation that happened yesterday after practice with Jernaro Gilford, which, by the way, I've been saying Jernaro forever. We found out it's Jernaro, so join me in pronouncing that correctly. Jernaro Gilford, the cornerbacks coach. It's an interesting group with Eddie Heckard from Weber State, one of the starters. Jacob Robinson, now a full-time cornerback after kind of splitting time between safety and nickel and corner last year. Here's Spencer's conversation with Jernaro Gilford yesterday.
Jernaro, it's day 2 of full pads, and understandably when the pads go on, things just get more physical. Yeah. Some skirmishes, it's to be expected. It happens every year. It's football. How do you handle those and process those when you see those break out in practice?
It's at first it's like, okay, we got some guys who are physical, a little bit chippy, a little bit, but then it's like, okay, we have to remember to be smart mentally, because we don't want to lose anybody, offense or defense. And we've been in that situation before where we've had stuff like that and lost a guy to a broken hand or something just crazy like that. So it's very important for us to talk to our guys, tell them to be mentally strong, especially when stuff like that happens. We have to protect our family. So.
Yeah, Kalani just said, we've got to be stronger mentally, but I like the aggression and the intensity. It's kind of a funny balance. So, yeah, what's the appropriate coaching method for something like that?
We know we're a physical team. We're just physical by nature, just because of the guys that we have, how they work in the weight room, how they go about things. So now we just have to complement that with the mentality as far as just being smart, so nothing dumb happens.
Your cornerbacks have been, and these are their words, enjoying the change of pace on the defensive side. Yeah. Just the physical nature, the speed, the things that Jay Hill has brought to it. What have you noticed has been the biggest difference schematically, and then how your players have translated over in that regard?
They just get to challenge more. They get to show what they can do, there will be more situations where the ball might come out faster because we are doing some different things. But at the same time, they still get to use the same techniques that they've used in the past years, but they just might use more of those tools now than they used before. But at the end of the day, they absolutely love it because it's more pressure on them. So.
Eddie Heckard is a guy who seems to enjoy that additional pressure and is battle-tested for sure. Yeah. Along with Eddie, who else do you feel like you can throw out on that island and they'll be okay?
Eddie, Jacob, Cam Garrett, Maury, Caleb Christensen has been doing a pretty good job as far as the nickel goes. And then we have some young guys coming up. We have Jaden Dunlap coming from a JC, and then we have a couple freshmen, Marcus McKenzie, Evan Johnson. So we have a pretty deep group. Some guys are young, but talented. So it should be fun.
Of all of those guys you just mentioned, who has surprised you the most in the first week or so of camp?
You know what? Honestly, I would say the young guys and probably Caleb Christensen, because my expectations for the vets are very, very high. My expectations for Eddie, Jacob, Cam, and Maury are very, very high. So if they're not playing at that level, we got a problem, But the young guys, just learning from those guys, the vets have been great, taking the young guys under their wing, showing them the way before practice, after practice, watching film, and that's what it takes to be great. So,
with the change in the defensive scheme, how does that affect your rotation and what you have to do, and how many guys you eventually are going to cycle in on a regular basis?
The best guys are going to play, and that's that's just how it's gonna be. They gonna play until they can't. You know, of course we have to be smart. I get it. You know, if they need a sub, then okay. But it won't be as much as the previous years. You know, so the best guys need to be in shape because we are expecting them to be on the field. So,
ideally, how big will that rotation be? Because I know you mentioned nickel. It's no secret. Jay's going to run nickel. You said we're going to run the nickel at times. But how many guys do you want to be in your rotation when the games start?
It's going to be the top 3, to be honest with you, and then we'll just go from there. I mean, if a fourth gets in, a fourth gets in. If not, if those 3 can take it the full game, then they'll just take it the full game. You know, but that's how we want it. We want our best guys on the field. And again, if something happens, then we'll make adjustments, you know. So,
Jernaro Gilford is with us on BYU Sports Nation. I want to dive into your relationship with Jay Hill a little bit. He's obviously coaching the safeties. You're over the cornerbacks. What's your relationship like with Jay as you push towards season number 1 in the Big 12?
Oh man, it's great, man. I love everything he does, everything he stands for, the way that he approaches the game. You know, smart. Very, very high IQ. You know, just certain things that he sees that I've never really thought about. You know, so it's been great just being around him since January, however many months that is. What's that, about 8 months? You know, but at the same time, he's allowing me to be myself. He's allowing me to coach my guys the way that I want to. We're on the same page. We both want the same thing. We both want our guys to challenge. Make plays, be themselves, and try to win some games.
Sure. You mentioned, like, you're going to rely heavily on your veterans. Yeah, of course. But I know that you're a hard charger. You're not going to go easy on them. So over the remainder of camp, for a guy like Eddie Heckard, what are the things that you're harping on him about?
Just becoming a coach on the field. You know what I'm saying? There's no doubt that he can play. He can make plays. Now, I really want him to take the young guys under his wing, make sure that they're doing everything in their power to get better every single day. So that's, and for Eddie, Jacob, Cam, Maury, all of them. You know, so for the next 2 or 3 weeks, they have to get the young guys ready. In the event something happens, and you know they're thrown in there for whatever reason it may be, but it's gonna be up to them to really, you know, get them going.
We'll finish with this. How many reps, like full speed reps, in practice right now, if you were thrown in pads right now, do you think you could handle?
Oh man, I'll give you a solid 1. Like one good one though. I give you one good one, and I'm tapping out, and give me the water, and I need to be stretched, cold tub and everything. But the 1 is gonna be good though. I like a full speed solid rep. I give you 1 perfect one. After that, I'm tapping out. I'm tapping out. Nah, I got about but I'll probably give you about 3.
Okay,
I'll probably give you about 3.
Okay. So 1 dynamite rep,
1.
but 3 pretty solid.
Yeah, like if you told me it was the last play, I'm good. Like for sure, one good one. If it's a drive, I'm gonna be like, whoo. I give you 3 good ones, and then I'm gonna need a sub for sure.
We'll call you the one drive wonder. Is that cool?
Yep. That's all I need. That's all I need.
Jernaro, thanks for the insight. Great to talk with you.
Appreciate you.
Thanks to Jernaro Gilford for joining the program. It's going to be interesting to see that group, because if the rotation truly is 3 players, it's a very tight group. You have Eddie Heckard and Jacob Robinson as your starters based on what we've seen so far in practice. And then Camden Garrett is another Weber State transfer at corner. Maury Bombo is at Tyler Junior College, coached by Tanner Jacobson, former BYU safety as well. He played last year. He was a redshirt, just played in the 1 game, or I guess he played in a couple of games. But, yeah, he's a guy that played in 5, just had the 1 tackle. He could be asked to do much more as well. And if the rotation truly is 3, that is significantly different than what we saw last year, with a lot of line changes at times with that entire defense. So we're already seeing some differences in the approach from the defense, but not only that, but with the cornerbacks in who is actually playing. Our question of the day is this. At this point, are you more interested in conference realignment fallout or BYU football fall camp storylines? Because, oh, by the way, that's going on too. Weigh in on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Dallin Arnold definitely fall camp at this point. It's time to put on the blue goggles and start drinking blue Kool-Aid. Hey, that always tastes good throughout the year. Colson on X. The conference realignment talk is starting to get old. It's been 5 days since anything has happened. Oh, 5 whole days. The football season is getting nearer, and I'm excited to see how the position battles shake out for this season. If there's no quarterback battle or major injuries, which no one wants in fall camp, the drama is really who is actually playing, who are the starters, and who are the backups, and that is what we are digging into, and we just did with the cornerbacks a moment ago. Much more coming up throughout fall camp right here on BYU Sports Nation. After Further Review aired last night on the BYUtv app. If you missed it, it's on demand. You want to see it again, the Big 12 preview show. Get that right now on BYUSN.com or the free BYUtv app. Coming up, Jason Scheer of Wildcat Authority gives us the inside scoop on how Arizona's move to the Big 12 really went down. This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
BYU Food to Go's convenient location at 2191 North Canyon Road in Provo makes bringing popular BYU foods to your next event easy. Everything's ready when you need it at the drive and load pickup. You drive in and they load no matter the weather. And stop in the on-site creamery for great BYU chocolate milk and ice cream. BYU Food to Go, bringing campus to your table. Call for details, 801-422-5001.
If you're looking to build your brand awareness and increase market share as BYU moves into the Big 12, this is the place, BYU Athletics. We can provide the tools you need to make sure your company is seen and heard. BYU Athletics is where you can align your products and services with loyal fans that cheer for our Cougars. And they can also help your business win. Learn more about what a partnership with BYU Athletics and your company will look like. After all, this is the place. Email sponsorship at byu.edu today.
Seasons, 6 bowl appearances, 4 bowl wins, 2 top 25 finishes. BYU's head coach, Kalani Sitake, the heart of Cougar Nation. Join the studio audience for BYU football with Kalani Sitake, Tuesdays at 6:30 during the season at BYU Broadcasting. Get a chance to post questions or catch a post-show selfie with Coach. Sign up to attend at BYUSN.com. Now's your chance to feel the pulse of BYU football with Kalani Sitake.
We're live in Studio B with your day-to-day Cougar Sports play-by-play. Jeremy Jordan alongside the homie, Spencer Linton. Great chat with Jernaro. We learned his name's Jernaro yesterday, not Jernaro.
First and foremost, you've got to get the names right.
Got to get the names right, and we have not. So we're here to learn, okay?
We're going to do that.
We did yesterday. And that cornerback group being that tight was really interesting.
Absolutely. Only 3. Like, they're clearly going to rely more heavily on a core of smaller, like a smaller number of players.
Eddie Jacob, and looks like there's a battle between Maury
and Cam Garrett.
And Camden.
Yeah. That could be very, very interesting. Like, and as you said, in fall camp, that's what it's about.
That's the real drama.
When there's no quarterback controversy, the other drama is just like, well, who's going to be the guy?
I know, it's who's going to be the backup quarterback? Like, that's like a big one.
Yeah. Speaking of drama, a guy who has been in the middle of it as far as Big 12 expansion goes, and the Pac-12 schools in Arizona most notably go in realignment with the Pac-12 and moving over to the Big 12 conference, is Jason Scheer. He's the editor of WildcatAuthority.com. Jason, vindication for you on so many fronts. Oh my gosh. People said, no, don't listen to Jason Scheer. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You were right. How vindicated do you feel now that Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah are in the Big 12?
Yeah, I got to say that day where they announced it felt pretty good for me. Realignment gets crazy. The fans get crazy. But, yeah, when that finally happened, it was definitely nice.
Okay, so how many Twitter followers did you gain, by the way, last week? Well, I'm one of them, by the way.
I would say I think it was like 6,000 or 7,000.
Wow.
That's significant growth. right there,
Yeah.
which is also what the incoming schools gained in TV revenue in the future. Jason, walk us through sort of the timeline and what you were hearing and seeing and how this all went down with Arizona and then ultimately Arizona State and Utah as well.
I think we could start a year ago, but once Colorado made the decision to move to the Big 12, I think everything really picked up. And basically the school presidents went to George Kliavkoff and said, we need to see whatever numbers you're able to present. And so last week, those numbers were presented finally, and they just weren't good. And then once that happened, schools got very serious about moving. They were all talking to each other. And then on Thursday night, Arizona, I know the timeline's a little murky out there, but Arizona basically got permission to enter the Big 12. There was a Board of Regents meeting and all that earlier in the week. And it kind of came to a head on Friday morning when they were all Utah, Arizona, ASU, were all able to agree at the same time to go to the Big 12.
Jason, there was this report that came out late Thursday night or early Friday morning, depending on when you sleep and how you want to look at that, that the remaining 9 teams in the Pac-12 were all of a sudden going to rally and they were going to stay together. And this was coming out from some notable national sources. But you kind of dug in and said, no, I don't think that's going to happen. What were you hearing on Friday morning as it pertains to the Pac-9 trying to stick together, and how much validity was there in that push to not allow any other teams or not encourage almost any other teams to leave the conference?
Yeah, I said at the time that had the Pac-12 stayed together on that Friday morning, it would have been one of the most shocking things that I've seen play out, because as of Thursday night, Arizona was gone. They were working on the rollout to join the conference and all that. And the deal hadn't changed. And so the deal wasn't good enough earlier in the week. And I just couldn't figure out why the deal would all of a sudden be good enough to sign for everyone on Friday. And Oregon and Washington, from what I understood on Friday morning, were basically trying to leverage a little bit more money. They were going to the Big Ten. They had already decided it. They were trying to basically leak some stuff and use reporters to get some more money. They weren't really able to do it. And then they didn't actually go to the Pac-12 meeting. And no one really found that out until after the meeting was concluded. But Oregon and Washington basically called each of the schools that were still in the Pac-12 about 10 minutes before the meeting and said, we're going to the Big Ten. We apologize. We have to do this. So there wasn't a point on Friday morning where I said to myself, oh man, the Pac-12 is staying together. It was just kind of weird how it all played out.
When do you sort of pin down the demise of the league? Because to me, it wasn't last week. It was probably in the years previous when it had opportunities to add other teams or join forces with the Big 12 a couple of years ago. Or let's be honest, like 10 or 20 years ago, there were other teams that could have been added too, and they weren't. BYU, we've been sitting there thinking maybe BYU to the Pac-12 was the best option. In the end, it's the Big 12. And it feels like everything worked out, I guess, for BYU. But where and when do you point to sort of the demise of that league?
There's a lot of things to point to. The first thing that comes to mind is years ago when Texas and Oklahoma announced they were leaving the Big 12, the Pac-12 had an opportunity to basically merge or take the remaining Big 12 schools, and the presidents passed on it. And they said, we don't want to expand. Had they decided to expand and take those schools, the leftover 8 schools, I believe at the time, we wouldn't be in this, situation. The Pac-12 would be financially stable and all that. Under Kliavkoff, the biggest thing that I think the Pac-12 went wrong is when they went to market, they actually pretty much got the Big 12 offer, the 31.7 per school. George Kliavkoff felt it wasn't enough, that they could get more money. The Big 12 basically said, we're cool with that deal. They went to market way earlier than anyone expected. They signed that deal before the Pac-12, and then the Pac-12 was out of luck because ESPN didn't want to spend more money for the Pac-12. The other networks were Big Ten involved in that stuff. And so basically the Pac-12 misplayed or Kliavkoff misplayed the entire situation. And then the money that he thought would be there wasn't there. He asked for $40 million a school, and it wasn't happening. So had he signed the deal for 31.7, again, the Pac-12 wouldn't be in this situation.
Jason Scheer is the editor of WildcatAuthority.com. He is on BYU Sports Nation. He has been just absolutely ingrained in the Pac-12, Big 12 realignment madness, and madness is probably putting it lightly, Jason. But just from your personal standpoint, especially going back to just before Colorado moved, and you had been in on that. It wasn't just Arizona. Like, you had been involved with the whole, like, idea that somebody from the Pac-12, the Four Corner schools, could break away if this deal doesn't come together fast enough. But they're in their quote-unquote ivory tower pointing fingers at you in the great and spacious building of the Pac-12 that is no longer. And here you are saying this is still going to happen. So when did you first know that somebody 100% was going to break away and that you were actually going to be right?
Colorado was the worst kept secret in realignment. I mean, they were going. And that's why it was really surprising when Kliakov went there on Football Media Day and was like, they're all sticking together, because everybody knew Colorado was gone. I would say that Colorado had been talking to other schools in the conference for weeks. So once, it was just a matter of when Colorado was announcing it. I'm actually not sure there was a number that could have kept Colorado in the conference. Like, they were pretty steadfast. And then when that when that meeting actually happened after Colorado left, and I heard that day what the numbers were, and it wasn't even the numbers. It was 100% streaming. Apple would not guarantee any linear aspect of it. And once I found that out, I knew it was pretty much over, because the Arizona school president was on record as saying the most streaming he would take would be 50%. He could probably live with that. And this was 100%. And it wasn't going to happen. But Colorado, I mean, they've been going for a while. It was just a matter of how and when they were going to announce it.
I know Colorado played games for the last 12 years in the Pac-12, but I'm not sure they went there. They've been sort of Big 12 vibes for a long time, right? And now Arizona State, Utah headed to the Big 12. How is this move being perceived by Arizona fans? Certainly at basketball, it's going to be wild.
I think Arizona fans, to be honest, are taking it better than Utah and ASU fans. I think it's a great cultural fit with the conference. And at the end of the day, Tucson is a very different place. The U of A is a very different place than the other schools in the conference, because this is a basketball town. And when you look at the Big 12 for basketball and some of the games that Arizona is going to be playing now, I mean, it's crazy. It's the best basketball conference in the nation. And so Arizona fans are pretty pumped. And there's a long history of not getting along well with the Pac-12 in recent memory. So, fans are excited. It's different. I think that a lot of people are skeptical about change, and some people don't deal well with change. But for the most part, I think Arizona fans that I've come across are beating the move with a lot of excitement.
Jason, I'm going to ask you to do your best and not let some of this rivalry bleed into the question that I'm about to ask you, because Arizona and Arizona State has a lot of vitriol, just like BYU and Utah. But Jeremy and I sit here in Studio B and around BYU facilities, and we just wonder, what the heck's going on at Arizona State? Why was there so much trepidation and hesitancy for Arizona State when the writing was clearly on the wall that the Pac-12 was a dead end, to not just happily accept the invite to the Big 12? And then when you get in the Big 12, you're still kind of just grovelly about it, and your athletic director says, well, I'm not going to Morgantown, I'm sending somebody else.
He has apologized this morning, by the way.
Okay, so an apology now. What?
So now we're good.
Can you explain to me why, like, what's going on at Arizona State that has made them, to quote another writer, be dragged across the finish line to join the Big 12?
I think the biggest issue is that people have to realize the school president, Michael Crow, athletics are not a major priority for him. And this is a guy that stood by the side of Larry Scott to the bitter end.
Yeah.
Like, supported Larry Scott, became close friends with Larry Scott, was very vocal on the promise of the Pac-12 years ago, so the Pac-12 was going to be ahead of everyone. And so in order for him to make the move to the Big 12, it was basically for him admitting that he had been wrong. And so there was a lot of pride there. And he was there to the bitter end now, too. Arizona and Utah were going to the Big 12 before ASU. It didn't take until late Thursday, early Friday morning where he finally made the move. He started thinking about it earlier that week, but He wanted to go. Like, the only reason Arizona went to that Pac-12 meeting on Friday morning is because Michael Crow wanted them to, like, give it one last hope. So I think a lot of it is pride, the fact that it didn't end up the way that he originally had said. And he's just not an athletics guy. I mean, it's just athletics just aren't a priority to him, and it kind of has shown in the last week or so.
What power did the Board of Regents have relative to perhaps Arizona wanting to go by itself to the Big 12 without Arizona State, or was it always going to be both in the same league?
It's tough to say, because the Arizona president is on record as saying before that they could go without ASU, that he didn't want to go without ASU. They wanted to go together, but if it came to it, they could make the move. And then last week, the narrative was they're going together no matter what. I believe, based on what I've heard, that if it came down to it and ASU absolutely refused to go, Arizona would have gone by itself. I don't know how likely that is. I think that both schools have kind of come to an understanding that they were moving together. But if push came to shove, I absolutely believe that Arizona could have gone alone.
Jason, Arizona's athletic director and president have both made mention of the renewed rivalry now, potential renewed rivalry with the likes of BYU. And so, again, it's not a true rivalry, but BYU and Arizona definitely do have some history and a past. So how would you explain or define the rivalry relationship between BYU and Arizona and that relationship moving forward into the Big 12?
I think it's a natural football rivalry. I really do. I mean, there's been, I remember the game a couple years ago, Jed Fish's first game in Vegas where BYU won. I still remember my wife and I went to the Vegas Bowl, which was one of those fun games, atmospheres in Vegas that I've been to. And to me, the way that BYU fans travel and their fan base and all that, to me, it's a natural rivalry. Like, I don't know how they're going to do divisions in the Big 12 or how they're going to break that up. But I'd like to see Arizona and BYU play, because there really is a history between the two schools.
Jason, great to talk with you. Well done on your part to make it and traverse through all of this realignment craziness. It's been fun. It's been maddening for sure, but hopefully you get some time off. Like, is it your vacation week now?
He's in fall camp, man.
Yeah, it's fall camp. There's no vacation.
There's no vacation.
It's over.
It's true. It's not happening. But hopefully, with no realignment this week, it feels a little less stressful. We appreciate the time and joining BYU Sports Nation.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And you got it. Jason Scheer, editor of WildcatAuthority.com. If you want more of his material, head to that website. Also, we just followed him on Twitter. He's got apparently 6,000 to 7,000 new Twitter followers after
he was on it.
Correct reports, and
he was the only local guy that was really putting out anything that felt like it mattered to any of the parties involved. So good information from him. And yeah, Arizona made more sense than Arizona State and Utah in this equation. I think that they were clearly in, it sounds like from what he was saying, the 14th team.
Yes.
If the league didn't go to 15-16, they were going to bring in Arizona with Colorado, and that was going to be the league.
And Arizona's president did join the meeting on Friday morning as a favor primarily to Michael Crow of Arizona State. And he later said, we thought that there was some real movement and a real chance that maybe there was going to be something last minute and we were going to kind of rally together and sign a grant of rights. And I'm speaking of Arizona's president, but when Oregon and Washington called 10 minutes before the meeting, it's like, okay, well, that's not happening.
And then they don't even show up. And when we say a meeting, I'm assuming it's on Zoom.
Sure, yeah.
They just don't even show up. You're like, hey, where are they? They're going to the Big Ten.
Wow.
They just missed us. Crazy. Hey, Saturday, check out the number 13 women's soccer team in the country, BYU hosting Idaho State in an exhibition. Trevor Mandich thinks BYU should not sleep on Idaho State. 9 Eastern on BYUtv and ESPN+.
Up next, our friend Brett McMurphy is back at it. And we're asking now, because of his report, is there a possibility that BYU could play in a bowl game against a conference opponent? Would we like that? This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Dexter & Dexter is a full-service law firm offering a wide range of legal services. Since 1995, we have helped more than 20,000 Utahns both to navigate life's challenges and to make the most of life's opportunities. From car accidents to business law, from divorce to estate planning, we are passionate about shouldering your burdens. To learn more about scheduling a no-obligation consultation, visit dexterlaw.com.
Celebrate rewardflation at Mountain America. Get double rewards on every purchase with your Mountain America Rewards credit card to help with fuelflation, foodflation, and phytoflation. And on top of double rewards, every time you use your card, you'll be entered in Mountain America's smartphone giveaway. Details at macu.com/double. Double your rewards today.
Follow BYU Sports Nation on social media, on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Threads.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am Spencer. He is Jerem. Opened up the show with some fantastic interviews. Jernaro Gilford. We just talked to Jason Scheer of WildcatAuthority.com.
Just Jays. That's all we do now.
Apparently.
Yeah.
He gave us some great insight. If you missed either of those interviews, again, those are always on demand. For now, let's rise and shout and bring on what's trending. What's Trending, presented by Feastbox, donating 10% of every order to Full of Hope, a charitable organization that feeds hungry families. Brett McMurphy of the Action Network tweeted on Pac-12 bowl games, obviously seeking new tie-ins because the Pac-12, we believe, will be no longer. I mean, there's no official word, but
still exists at the moment.
The writing is on the wall for sure.
Yeah.
McMurphy says there's potential for schools from the same conference, because there are only now 4 major conferences if the Pac-12 goes away, to play in bowl games if they didn't play in regular season. So, like, the idea of playing a conference mate that you didn't play in the regular season, but if they're available and bowl eligible, you could play them in a bowl game. Jeremy, would you be okay with BYU taking on a Big 12 foe that they didn't see in the regular season in the postseason?
Would I be okay with it? Yeah, I'd be okay with it. Ideally, no. It's just fun to play someone from a different conference that you don't normally play, and it's an exhibition game of sorts anyways. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that, because regardless of whether the Pac-12 still exists, it's not a major conference anymore. It is it's going to be a group of 6 conference, which we've never said ever, but here we are. Like this year, if BYU played Baylor, Baylor's unique because we played them the last 2 years. But if BYU played UCF this year, it's like, well, played them in 2020. If BYU played, who are the others? Kansas State this year. I'm interested by that, but we know that Kansas State is probably on the schedule next year. But who knows? Because we don't know about pods. Are they going to create divisions? I'm okay with it. I'm not like anti that idea, but I'm not super pro that idea either. I would love to play someone from another league.
Yes.
Now, riddle me this. Would you rather do that or a group of 5 or 6 team?
I would probably rather play a group of 5 team in that regard.
Just for variety?
Yes, variety, and frankly, like, maybe your
More
chances
winnable?
of winning that bowl game, like, become better. I know that there's some good Group of 5 teams. Like, I'm not saying that there aren't some.
We're not that crazy removed from independence.
Some teams that are still really good in the Group of 5, like the Boise States and the Memphises, and frankly, San Diego State. Like,
yes,
those teams are out there, and they can still play. Like
Louisiana's emerged,
and they'll be motivated to beat a Power 5
And then
team.
if you lose, we didn't care. Remember, you just play that card.
You're protected by that.
P5, we're
protected by that.
P4, we don't care.
So, but for variety's sake, I think I would probably rather take on a Group of 5 team than play another Big 12 team in a bowl game. Like, it feels a little weird to me.
Winning a bowl game matters. We feel very different about a season depending on that. Also, I would argue this, and we'll dig into this more later. Right now, I think I feel like I'm okay not playing a Power 4? Is that what we're going to call it? Power 4 team in non-conference play. Because if you do that, you ensure you only need 3 wins to get to a bowl game every year. And yes, I want the standard to be raised for BYU, but what I don't want to do was what I think Utah is foolishly doing this year. They're playing 2 P5s in non-conference.
Florida and
Baylor. They're
Baylor.
hosting Florida and going to Baylor. Like, are you trying to go 7-5? Like, what in the world? No, that is too much. Even for Utah, who has won the Pac-12 the last 2 years, they've been tremendous. That's too much for most teams to go 2 P5s in non-con. Blaine Fowler said this before, and I was like, what? Are you nuts to not play a Power 5 team? I wanted that to be Utah most of the time. But now that Utah is going to be a league game, I'm like, I'm not that as interested in random Virginia Tech, Miami, whatever. Like, are those games fun?
Yes,
are those opportunities
they are.
cool? 1,000,000%. But it's cooler to ensure that you make a bowl game that year. Like, this year, I'd be just fine if BYU didn't go at Arkansas. Because guess what? The 9 straight Power 5 games BYU's never done in the Big 12 would be just fine with me.
That's super tough. Now, if the game is at home, then that
yes, but you're going to have to do.
But you have to give and take.
Yes.
However,
if it's a neutral in Vegas with someone, that's interesting.
I mean, there are Mississippi. Let's take Mississippi for example. Ole Miss is on
a home and road with Ole Miss.
Future BYU schedule. I believe starting in 2028 or 2029.
I'd take it 1 year at a time.
So it's still about 5 or 6 years away, but like that is fun.
That's
like
an
a
intriguing
home
one.
and road
the
with
Grove,
with an SEC team.
No way Lane Kiffin's still there.
Especially the year that Ole Miss has to visit Provo, because now maybe you can open the season with 3 straight home games, right? You can host a Group of 5 team, an FCS team, and then you host Ole Miss, and now you've got 3 straight home games to begin before you have to open up conference play.
That's don't get me wrong, I'm intrigued by it. I'm just thinking, like, what is best for BYU football? I think it's that BYU doesn't need a Power 5 in the non-con.
And you're talking about just getting to a 6th win, right?
Yes.
Just get
like minimum standard for success in a season.
Because it doesn't impact your conference championship hopes at all.
Welcome to that thought.
Right?
Yep.
Like that's a new thing for BYU.
It doesn't really matter. Like, but if you're 3-0 out of the gate, hey, do we want to test ourselves early? It's like, no, you're gonna play 9 Power 5 games in the Big 12. Like, why do you need a 10th? But I get why that might still exist. I understand.
Yeah.
And I would be surprised if BYU does not. BYU is an aggressive scheduler, as I have talked about for years, for better or worse. And most of the time it's been for better. It's been a fun situation. The fans rally around that. It's good. It sells tickets. It's interesting on TV in a good slot. But for the sake of Brigham Young football in the first couple of years, maybe there's a point where BYU gets to, it's like, no, we can handle it, and we win 8 wins.
And Utah's been a Power 5 team for 12 years, so they probably feel like they can handle it better.
Yes, but I'm telling you.
That's tough.
They're not going to.
Florida and Baylor on top of 9 conference games in a Pac-12 finale that is supposed to be like one of the better overall conference slates that they've had in the last decade. That's rough.
There's a lot, like Pac-12 was really good last year. And as much as everyone's crapped on them, they were a good league last year.
Better this year.
There you go.
With all of the quarterbacks back.
Like USC is actually going to do something this year.
Aren't there 5 teams in the Pac-12 ranked in the preseason top 25?
They're good. No, it's good.
It's a good conference.
It's good.
Their finale
That's why I got plucked. You didn't pluck crappy teams. You plucked good teams. Come on now. Okay, topic 2. BYU football had practice number 7 yesterday, number 2 in full pads. We saw about the last 30 minutes. What stood out to you?
Oh, the aggression and energy. Yeah, there were some skirmishes, and it happens. It's football. It's going to happen every year, but typically in years past, I think I've seen like, okay, there was a little fight breakout here, and then like it's a few days later and we hear about one, but there were multiple in the same practice.
And there were punches thrown.
Yes.
Multiple punches.
So it's like, oh, okay.
Where it was like, oh, why are you punching someone with a helmet
Sure,
on?
yeah.
That's always a suspect decision.
It's a fine line that the coaches have to walk. And I talked to Jernaro Gilford about that. Like, how do you adequately coach that? Like, because you want some of that intensity and that fire, but as Kalani Sitake said, we just have to be mentally tougher. In fact, here's the full quote from Coach Sitake.
Yeah, good to see, but not the punches. I mean, I don't mind the intensity. I tell the guys that football is violent and it's physical, but we have to be tougher mentally and not throw punches, not cost the team. And there's still some new guys that aren't used to what we're doing, but the veteran guys know, you know. But I think for the most part, competition's really nice.
Where do you draw the line? Is it pushing?
To me, pushing and shoving's fine.
It's fine.
And take out your aggression in the flow of a play. But also, I'm not like 6'3", 320, and like built to push people around. I like what we do is talk. You know, it's different. Verbal jabs. But yeah, in there, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay with some of that. But it was a new guy that did it. It wasn't like one of the super cultural impactors.
Yeah.
And it was like on the third string guys. So it's not a big deal. Like, it wasn't Malik Moore going at Isaac Rex. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the ones and the twos, it was with the threes. They're fighting for position. They're trying to get some playing time. Maybe something's going on at home. You got to understand the humanity of the football player, too. Like, that's okay. It's okay. No one got hurt. No one like, if Jared Kelnick of the Mariners, like, broke his foot in frustration, kicking, like, a Gatorade jug, and he's out like for 2 months.
Which
it's
is
like,
just why?
okay, now that's stupid.
Why?
Now you're
dumb.
making a stupid decision.
No,
that did not happen.
This is a young, emotional
Yes.
player that just lashed out a little bit. And frankly, I thought the coaches and the team did a good job of like separating it rather quickly.
Atunai Samaje was the one defensively that kind of broke it up. And again, I don't want to make a big deal about it. It wasn't that big a deal.
It's football.
We can talk about other
but that's what, I mean, that was the initial standout. You already brought up my second point, which is Isaac Rex. Isaac Rex.
The play of the
practice, the period, the session.
Yeah.
I think Isaac Rex is going to have a massive year. I really do. I think he's fully back.
And yes, and at times I feel like he was maybe forgotten. Maybe A-Rod was like, I know what he's going through physically, and I'm not going to put him in a position to not be able to make that play because I know what he can or can't do in this moment.
Now this feels like a 40 catch, 8 touchdown plus.
Maybe 500
400
yards.
to 500 yards of receiving type
John
season.
Mackey, semifinalist
or
award
Isaac.
kind of year, hopefully. Yeah.
I feel like Isaac is due for, it feels inevitable to me. Like just watching him.
He's too good not to
yes.
produce more. Like his freshman year, obviously BYU's playing a bunch of group of fives. They're doing their best. They're dominating. He has 12 touchdowns. It was awesome. More Isaac Rex. He had this spectacular touchdown catch in the corner, like a fade, kind of mossed it. It was great. Other stuff that stuck out. Parker Kingston ran with the ones a little bit. Parker Kingston might be that number 6 guy, right?
There's the catch right there by Isaac.
Catch. That's the catch. There you go. Talmadge Gunther had a really nice contested touchdown catch. Will Farron was the field goal kicker. He looks like the place kicker. He made both kicks. Matthias Dunn kicked both PATs, by the way.
Yes, word has it that Will has been more accurate overall through the first week of camp. Take that for what it's worth.
Yes, I like it. You need somebody. Let's go. And even then, in game 1, you can switch the kicker and then make a game winner. We saw that in 2016. Like, who knows, right? Who knows? And then Ryder, okay, we don't get to see every second of every practice, okay? So we're telling you just from what we've been able to see. Ryder Burton comes in and makes plays. That's what I'm seeing right now. Ryder Burton makes plays. He's from Springville, early enrollee. He was here in winter. He's got the swagoo, as Brian Logan would say.
He's super raw, Jerem, but his confidence level is through the roof, and Aaron Roderick loves him.
Threw a touchdown to JoJo Phillips, who went to Sierra Canyon, played a little basketball with Bronny James. And then there was a broken play where Ryder threw it out to LJ Martin, and I was like, that's overthrown. And it was right in the breadbasket for LJ.
Yeah.
Makes a grab. LJ Martin looks like a junior, by the way.
Yeah, he looks like he's ready to play Division I football right now.
I don't know how much LJ's going to play this year, but he looks good.
Yes.
Again, this is limited reps. Don't want to overblow something. Wait, we do. That's what we're doing with this segment. But I was like, is that a taste of the future right there? Ryder Burton, LJ Martin, like in 3 years?
Could be.
I don't know.
The BYU's coaching staff expects Ryder Burton to battle for the starting quarterback position as early as next year. That's from multiple coaches.
Yeah.
And Aaron Roderick is not one to typically use flowery language and jump the gun.
No, he doesn't.
No, he just, I'm telling you, like he expects Ryder with another full year in the system to compete for